My name is Shauna Mahajan, and I am from the United States, and I work as a research associate at the World Wildlife Fund. I think it was a really interesting way to think about how a lot of the research and ideas that we talked about in summer school actually can translate into, in my case, the work that I do for an environmental organization. And that was sort of a big motivation for me coming to the summer school, was to try to get deeper into a social science perspective and figure out how that can influence my work. So I found it was a great lens to hold throughout the whole process of this summer school, and having the space to really dive into these issues repeatedly throughout the summer school really helped start to open up avenues for how these ideas can maybe translate when I go back. I feel like my work all along, even before when I was more in the academic space to now, I've always been on the kind of the practitioner researcher line, and that a lot of the kind of research tools I think directly feed into a lot of the work that I do in more of a practitioner space. So I think that that's kind of been my nature all along, and especially in this more interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary space. There are more and more young scholars or young activists that are trying to figure out if you can have a foot in both worlds, and finding that we're all facing similar challenges in translating across these divides. So I think it's kind of always been a motivation in the work that I'm doing, and this was a perfect forum to actually dig into it with a whole group of other people who are trying to do the same thing.
Fabien Jacob from Tanzania. I'm a joint PhD student at Roskilde University in Denmark and the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. It's a very exciting process where, for the first time you see, an exciting group of young scholars interested in embracing all this new idea of scholarly activism work. And basically sort of appreciating that we need to communicate beyond traditional academic circles, and taking these new challenges of communicating our research ideas. And it's really exciting to see such a big group of young people into this. And it's a new area. It's got its own challenges, but there's so much excitement in all this initiative. So, and for me, I've been inspired by a few more established scholars who have taken a very strong activist role. So you look at people like Soterit Boras, who is based in Netherlands, people like Vandana Shiva, prominent Indian food sovereignty activist, but also our very own colleague. So we got a colleague from Mozambique who was very much this more scholar activist kind of approach. And these are the people who have sort of like inspired me to get involved into this. Of course, I'm not being naive, the challenges are there, limited space, institutional barriers, but still very much excited to get involved in this initiative.
My name is Felix Owusu. I'm from Ghana, and I'm currently based in Joburg in South Africa. Activism is important in that it helps us to engage with people. When we engage with people, we get to know and understand their challenges far better than being secluded in your office or somewhere where you are far-fetched from what they are going through. So out of this process, I've learned more tools as to how to engage better with people in tackling some of the challenging situations, challenging problems that we face, especially in the rural South, where I'm coming from. The research is to help some people, but then if it's found somewhere in a journal, hardly do people get access to these. But then through activist research, you're able to engage with them, you're able to share these vital information with them in layman's terms. So that's one way of helping them meet their basic needs.
My name is Kennedy Litimbeva. I'm a research fellow at the African Center for Technology Studies, based in Nairobi, Kenya. I think we got a lot out of this process, more importantly because it's a very interesting nexus between looking at research and how it can be translated to activism or activist causes. So I think what I got most was the different ways that people thought about it and the different avenues and channels that can be used to bridge that gap and push more research to activism causes. So for me, that variance of those varying platforms were really eye-opening and quite inspiring. My background professional background has been quite interesting because I started out in climate advocacy when I was still a student, and most of the work I've done has been had some activism elements, because I believe activism plays a very important role in bringing change in society. But now that I'm also a researcher, I'm very keen now to look at how research can be translated very specifically to support activist causes which have been really instrumental in bringing out the change and transformations that we are actually keen on bringing about.
So my name is Juliana Gabis, and I'm a PhD candidate at the School of Human Evolution and Social Change at Arizona State University. So the United States is my base, but I work all around the globe. I have had such privilege of being able to collaborate with some of the most incredibly inspiring and amazing people, including during these past 2 weeks during the STEP Center. Part of one of the reasons why I really wanted to become involved in this project before even really knowing what it was about was that I came into this program with the interest of wanting to continue that engagement, continue that collaboration. This was just a first step. It was an entry point for me to really get into this network and really see how we can take this back to the work that we're doing already, but also to come together and explore new opportunities for collaborations. One of the things that inspired me about this idea of activist researcher and what that really entails is different for each person, right? But even though I may not be the person on the front lines all the time, or always leading the campaign with that sign in my hand, like I feel like everything that we do, if we're working towards transformation or just sustainability transformations, is in that vein of activist research. Like it's this idea that we're trying to create change, we're trying to be change agents, and I've often struggled as someone who's gone from both the practice applied world in social work to now sociocultural anthropology and trying to do more of an applied focus, and struggling even against like the ways that the institutional framework from that more traditional model of academia kind of looks down in many ways, or at least has traditionally. It's changing in some places, but in many it's still a struggle, and for me I've faced that on various points in my career, and trying to justify why I'm doing the work that I'm doing and why it makes sense to pursue it from this angle and to take in all of these different perspectives. The Pathways approach, as I've articulated throughout this week, has really been instrumental in kind of helping me frame that, and I feel like that could be such a great asset for people who are doing this kind of work on the ground. Well, one of the things is just the small collaboration that we had with our team members, right? And to hear what different questions challenge them, like what they wanted to really get at. And for me, this was a space to talk about the ethical implications. I had been raising these for the past 2 weeks, and it was always something that like we didn't really get to delve deeper into. And I think that people who are on the ground, who are on that end of the spectrum of more of that applied practitioner or activism work, have so much that they could offer in that sense. And so part of it is that I'm really interested in getting their perspectives and being a part of that dialogic. But I also felt that it was something that my fellow participants during the summer school program were experiencing internally as this debate, like, where do we fit in on the spectrum, right? And that's how I see it. I see this as, the more traditional model of academia, that scholar, the armchair academic, they call them, to the other end of the spectrum where it's the right in your face activist that's doing the work on the ground and that's facing the challenges, but may or may not be working in isolation or in collaboration with people who are at both ends of the spectrum. And so part of my own takeaway from this process was that it gave us a chance to really explore this as a spectrum instead of being these silos, right? And what does that mean for us as where do we fit in, but also how can we help facilitate bridging that gap between the two spectrum ends. And so that's for me something I'm really trying to generate from this process, and I'd like to be able to help facilitate and stay engaged with people who are not just my summer school participants, but those who are going to be benefiting from this website and from interacting with that space, because one, I think it could be a great network of actors on all different levels, and forming those synergies is going to be essential to any type of work we do around sustainability transformations.